Welcome to The Grind, a podcast about the church planting process and missional strategies to make disciples of all nations. Coming to you from the offices of the Arkansas Baptist State Convention in Little Rock, Arkansas. Now, here are your hosts, Dave McClung and Chad Grigsby.
What's up, all you people out in Grind Podcast land? Hey, I'm Dave McClung, and with me is the lovely Chad Grigsby. What up, Chad?
What's up, Dave?
I am in my kitchen with my lovely fruit painting behind me. Chad is in Mississippi, actually. Sitting
Mississippi,
in the
Dave.
Yeah.
Prayers appreciated.
Yeah, you are sitting in the corner where you probably belong.
No one puts baby in a corner, but we always put Chad in the corner.
We put fine. Bad Chad in the corner.
Yeah.
Bad Chad. So, so we're back with you with the big idea from Neil Cole's podcast, and so we want to kind of recap a little bit and capture kind of a big idea theme that ran through the podcast, and really kind of the big theme that we talked about. We talked about a lot of different stuff, but kind of the common thread that ran through all of it was how to create a disciple-making movement, which is what he's going to talk about when he comes in April 19th and 20th. And so if you haven't signed up for that, be sure and do that, because it's going to be great. But a lot of things to tie in with creating a disciple-making movement, which kind of begins with one of his big pieces of advice at the end, to listen to Jesus and do what he says. and that sounds very simple, but that is not easy to do. And so, especially when you start looking in the Gospels at what Jesus said and did and how that varies from what we say and do. So I think at the root of this is a gospel issue that we have to be listening to Jesus and following the model and method of Jesus for making disciples if we want any kind of disciple-making movement.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's kind of hard to settle on a big idea from Neil because there were so many big ideas.
Yeah.
Which is really why we're looking forward to having him in Arkansas. But I think the idea of, that disciple-making movement really coming from the gospel and coming from listening to Jesus and doing what he said. I think about the Pete Scazzaro book we've been reading, The Emotionally Healthy Leader, how all of our leadership should come from union with Christ. Right. And, he said there's no methods that are going to create a movement. That's not how movements work. But he's like, there are a lot of methods that can hinder movement.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of a good balance to think like there's no A plus B equals C of you creating a program that creates this movement. It's a work of the Spirit. It's listening to Jesus and doing what he says.
Right.
It's the gospel, But there are some things that you can do that actually hinder movement. And I think that's a good balance about thinking about this idea of disciple making.
Yeah. Well, and at the root of all that, we had this conversation about dying churches and, when things begin to decline. At the root of this is going to be a lack of dying to self. At the heart of the gospel is, Jesus died for us, in our place, and we have to die ourselves to receive life, to be raised to new life with him. And typically when movements stop or growth declines or churches die or people fall away, it's because we've stopped dying to self. We've stopped following Jesus, listening to Jesus. We've decided that our methods are better than the gospel, and it just won't work. And when he talked about that, he said that, when dying churches die, they're dying because they have refused to die to themselves. And man, we just see this over and over and over, even in churches that seem to be healthy. That all the external metrics seem to be fine. But if there's not that core, gospel issue of us dying to self, listening to Jesus and doing what he says, then all the bells and whistles and all the metrics that we measure mean nothing if that core issue is not there.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, think about how much of what we do, whether it's trying to revitalize a church or whether it's starting a church or anything really related to church, we have bought in and put all of our chips in on methodology. At times it feels like that there's a program that's going to get us out of this, or if we just start with the right methodology or the right approach to church and strategy, then that will get us to where we want to be. And I just thought it was really grounding to be grounded back in the gospel, to be grounded back into Jesus and the Spirit, and just to think, look, if anything's going to go really beyond us and get to where it's movement and things are happening, it's not going to be some type of programmatic methodology. Yeah. Not that those aren't helpful skeletons, but movement happens through the Spirit. So yeah, just a sobering reminder that we so much, I think I asked him at one point, how much of what we're doing though is this magic methodology? And he's like, a lot of it. I think he even said at one point that, and he referenced Galatians, that it's heresy.
Yeah.
And it's not, so he said, call it what it is. It's not like, a tribe or, an approach or a philosophy. It's heresy.
Well, and I've been thinking about
which
this
is strong word.
Yeah, it is. And maybe it needs to be, labeled that. Maybe we need strong words. But, I've been thinking about this conversation a lot since we did this podcast. And one of the things that, he talked about was, we're real quick to bring new disciples into a worship gathering, but not real quick to put new disciples in a disciple-making relationship. And we pull them out of the environment they were in and put them in a new environment, which removes them from people in their old environment that they could be sharing the gospel with. That was kind of a long, crazy statement.
No, it makes sense.
Yeah. But, and I think, one of the things that I've been really chewing on a lot is we've got things backwards. I think, there's a time to pull them into a worship gathering for sure. Because that's a part of, our growth and our relationship with Jesus, to celebrate the King and do that with other believers and sing praises and offer prayers, and all of that is fine. Not saying do away with worship, but we bypass putting them in a disciple-making relationship to get them to a worship gathering, and they can't be discipled from the worship gathering. It just won't happen.
No. Yeah.
And so, so I think if anything, we've got to add a step and not rush them into that worship gathering too quickly, but make sure that they're growing as a disciple, and as a part of that disciple-making growth, that they're reaching their friends and neighbors, that they are going to make disciples quickly as well. And I just thought this whole conversation was so good. And
yep. I can't wait to have him in the state, man. It's going to be good.
Yeah. So if you haven't listened to Neil's podcast, go back and check that out. April 19th in Farmington, at First Baptist Farmington, and April 20th at City Church in Conway. And registration is up. You can get to it on our website at absc.org/Neil Cole, NEILCOLE.NEAL. And so check that out. And, man, we'd love to have you join us. And it's going to be a great time. Every time I've heard Neil speak, I have walked away just blown away. I mean, he's just an incredible speaker, incredible guy. And he's a practitioner. He does what he's talking about. It's not just theory. It's not what he did 15 years ago. It's what he's doing now. And so all his stories are fresh, and it's a kind of a life-giving time with him. And so, so come hang out with us, register, check it out. And we'll see you next time on The Big Idea.